come here carrying a wound, though perhaps you cannot yet name it. It lingers in the heart like a phantom that will not dissolve, a hunger that gnaws at the edges of your being. You call it love, or obsession, or even weakness, but beneath those words lies something more ancient and more archetypal. I must tell you, in the way that truth is always told like a whisper from the unconscious, that you're not addicted to the narcissist. Not in the way you imagine. What has its grip upon you is hope itself, the eternal flame of expectation that refuses to die even when all evidence points toward its futility. This is the paradox of your suffering. You are not bound to the person, you are bound to the image, to the promise of redemption that you believe their love might finally deliver. In the unconscious, there is a theater, and upon its stage play the archetypes of humanity. They appear not as flesh and blood, but as patterns older than history. Patterns that find hosts in the people you meet, in the partners you love, and in the enemies you resist. The narcissist is not merely a person with defects of character. They are the mask through which an archetype of power and shadow speaks. To you, they appear as a savior and a tormentor at once, and because your soul longs for wholeness, you are captivated by their presence, as if the key to your unfinished story lies hidden in their unpredictable gaze. But I tell you now, you are not drawn to them for who they are, but for who you imagine they will finally allow you to become. Hope is the most intoxicating of all substances the psyche can create. Unlike wine or opium, it does not merely dull the senses, it heightens them, sharpening your yearning until every nerve is tuned to a single point. Hope whispers that the wound will be healed, that the cold emptiness will one day be filled. It tells you that tomorrow will be the day they see you, that the mask will fall, that the real person behind their cruelty will step forward with open arms, and you wait and you endure, because hope keeps you chained more tightly than despair ever could. For despair closes the door, but hope leaves it ajar, and through that crack your soul imagines paradise. I have often said that the unconscious is not a wastebasket of forgotten memories, but a vast living system that weaves the patterns of our destiny. Within it lies the archetype of the child, the eternal hope bearer, the part of you that never stops believing in salvation. When you were small, perhaps love was given and withheld in strange rhythms, and your heart learned to wait for crumbs with the patience of eternity. The child archetype is immortal within you. It cannot die. Even when abandoned, even when betrayed, it clings to the dream that one day someone will come to fulfill what was missing. The narcissist becomes the stage upon which this ancient child replays its drama, believing that this time, if you love hard enough, endure long enough, sacrifice deeply enough, the story will end differently. That is why you return again and again, not to the person themselves, but to the story, to the unfinished script that the child within you is desperate to resolve. In dreams, I have seen this dynamic take form as a labyrinth. The dreamer walks endlessly through corridors, chasing the image of a beloved figure who always remains just beyond reach. At the center of the labyrinth is not the beloved, but a mirror, And when the dreamer looks into it, they see not the other, but the face of their own abandoned self. Such dreams reveal the secret truth that the narcissist is only the projection screen. What you truly seek is reunion with the self you lost long ago. But hope, this intoxicating hope, tells you that if you keep chasing the other, you will finally find yourself. It is a cruel paradox, because the more you pursue them, the further from yourself you drift. We must speak also of the shadow, for the narcissist awakens it with a surgeon's precision. You see in them the parts of yourself you cannot yet own: the grandiosity, the cruelty, the indifference. You tell yourself you despise these qualities, yet you are magnetized by them. For the unconscious does not discriminate between attraction and repulsion. It only knows that something unclaimed in you has been stirred. And so, the more you hate their arrogance, the more it binds you, the more you resent their lack of empathy, the more you are forced to confront your own neglected power. This is why leaving them feels impossible, because leaving them means turning inward to face the shadow you have projected outward. To walk away is not to lose them, but to gain yourself, and that is the most terrifying transformation of all. In the alchemical texts, the philosophers wrote of the soror mystica, the mystical sister who appears to the alchemist as both muse and tormentor. She is radiant with promise, yet fickle, withdrawing, just as the alchemist believes he has captured her essence. This figure is none other than the projection of the anima, the soul image of the opposite within us. When she is projected onto another, she becomes both angel and demon, keeping the seeker forever hungry, forever hopeful. The narcissist often carries this projection because their very emptiness acts as a perfect mirror for your longing. You pour your soul into them, and because they reflect nothing back, you believe there must be some hidden depth, some secret vault of love that will one day open, but often there's only the echo of your own yearning resounding in an empty chamber. Hope can be a sacred force, but when misdirected, it becomes a spell that blinds you to reality. It is not the narcissist who ensnares you, it is your own imagination, to your own refusal to abandon the fairy tale that love will conquer all. And yet, I do not tell you to extinguish hope, for without it humanity would collapse into despair. Rather, I tell you to transmute it, as the alchemist transmuted lead into gold. The task is not to destroy hope, but to redirect it inward, to recognize that what you long for in the other is a reflection of what you must recover in yourself. The hope that keeps you chained to them must be re-anchored to the possibility of your own wholeness. Only then does hope become the lantern that guides you out of the labyrinth instead of deeper into its endless corridors. You may ask, how does one achieve this? The unconscious does not yield easily, for it demands the sacrifice of illusions. You must allow yourself to feel the despair you have avoided, the grief of recognizing that they will never give you what you seek. This grief is a kind of death, the death of hope, as you have known it, and yet, as with all deaths in the symbolic life, it is also a rebirth. In facing the void left by their absence, you make space for the true self to emerge, the self that has been waiting all along behind the veils of projection. The pain of separation is the labor through which your wholeness is born. I have seen patients who, upon finally surrendering this false hope, are overcome by dreams of vast landscapes opening before them. One dreamer saw herself standing on the shore of a great ocean, the horizon unbroken, the air alive with possibility. Another dreamer found himself walking through a ruined cathedral only to discover a living tree growing at its center. Such images reveal the deeper truth when the false hope tied to another person is relinquished. The psyche releases a more authentic hope, one that is not dependent on the whims of another, but rooted in the eternal ground of the self. You are not addicted to the narcissist. You are addicted to the hope that the archetype of salvation projected onto them will finally fulfill you. But this is an illusion, a mirage conjured by the child within, who still waits for love to arrive from outside. The work of individuation demands that you turn inward, that you recognize the Savior is not out there, but in here, waiting in the depths of your unconscious. To reclaim this truth is to awaken from the spell, to free yourself from the labyrinth, to discover that what you sought in another has always been your own forgotten soul. When you reflect upon this hope that binds you, you may begin to see how it is woven with mythological threads that extend far beyond the personal. For what is hope but the promise of a future that redeems the past? And what is this promise if not the echo of ancient myths of salvation, resurrection, and eternal love? The soul does not create these fantasies by accident. They are archetypal images, patterns carved into the very fabric of the collective unconscious. Each time you cling to the narcissist's potential, you are not merely yearning for their affection, you are unconsciously invoking the myth of the Redeemer, the archetype of the Savior who will descend into your darkness and lift you into the light. It is no wonder the bond feels sacred, almost cosmic, for in truth, it is not the individual you deify, but the God image you project upon them. But gods projected onto mortals will always betray you, for no human being can carry the weight of divinity. When the narcissist fails to embody the angel you hoped for, your hope does not vanish, it intensifies. Convinced that the failure was temporary, a test, a necessary descent before the final revelation. And so the cycle tightens, binding you ever closer, until your very identity begins to orbit around this fragile star that refuses to shine. Here lies the terrible irony. The more they withhold, the more you believe in their hidden treasure, the more certain you are that beneath their indifference lies the jewel of unconditional love. Yet often there's nothing there but a void, an emptiness you cannot fill, because it does not belong to you. Still, hope insists, just one more day, one more gesture, and the truth will be revealed. This insistence is not weakness. It is the echo of the psyche's most primal instinct to complete what has been left unfinished. Freud called it repetition compulsion. I call it the attempt of the unconscious to heal itself by drawing the wound into consciousness. The narcissist awakens precisely the kind of wound that resists closure, and so you circle them as the moon circles the earth, endlessly repeating the dance of attraction and rejection. Each cycle offers the possibility of illumination, yet each cycle returns you to darkness. Only when you see that the true object of your longing is not the other, but the self will the orbit break, and the psyche finally spiral upward instead of endlessly around. In alchemy, the stage of Nigredo, the blackening, was considered the most painful, for it required the dissolution of all illusions. The alchemists believed that before gold could be created, one must first endure the rotting, the collapse of the old form. The narcissistic bond is precisely such a nigredo, a black sun that devours your light until you believe nothing remains. But I tell you, the black sun is not an end, but a beginning. It is the crucible in which false hope must die, so that true hope may be reborn. To endure this blackening without fleeing back into fantasy is the initiation of the soul, and only the courageous can withstand it. Yet, those who do emerge, not weaker, but stronger, for they discover fire that no projection can extinguish. Consider the dream of a woman who had been entangled with such a figure. In her dream, she saw herself chained to a crumbling statue. She pulled and pulled, but the chain seemed unbreakable. Finally, in exhaustion, she collapsed, and only then did she realize that the chain was fastened not to the statue but to her own wrist. The statue was hollow, already decaying, yet she had believed it to be her anchor. The dream revealed the truth. What held her captive was not the figure itself, but her refusal to let go. This is the reality of hope. When misplaced, it becomes a chain you clasp around your own flesh, mistaking bondage for salvation. The psyche is ingenious in creating these images, for it wishes to teach you through suffering what you refuse to learn through reason. The narcissist is both tormentor and teacher, for they mirror back to you the parts of yourself you abandon. Their indifference reveals your hunger. Their cruelty exposes your submission. Their lies uncover your desperate need for truth. They are not your healer. They are the shadow that provokes you into becoming your own healer. And once you have taken back the projections, once you have claimed your power from their hands, you will see them for what they are, not gods, not démons, but human beings, limited and wounded, just as you are. The spell will break, and in its place will come clarity. But beware, for the breaking of illusions is accompanied by profound grief. You will grieve not the person themselves, but the future you imagined with them, the story you wrote in secret and rehearsed in your heart. You will grieve the years you waited, the sacrifices you made, the parts of yourself you silenced for the sake of hope. This grief must not be bypassed, for it is a very process by which the unconscious relinquishes its old pattern. To weep for what never was is to cleanse the soul of fantasy, and only then can the soil be fertile for reality to grow. If you avoid this grief, you will find yourself drawn back again, circling once more around the empty statue, still convinced that one day it will awaken. In myth, the hero descends into the underworld, not to rescue another, but to retrieve their own soul. Orpheus went in search of Eurydice, but the deeper truth was that he sought reunion with the anima within. When he turned back, when he failed to trust the inner process, he lost her forever. This story is not about punishment, but about the necessity of faith in the unseen self. You too are called to descend, not to rescue the narcissist. but to bring back the parts of yourself you left behind in their keeping. If you succeed, you will emerge carrying a treasure no one can take from you. If you fail, you will wander endlessly between worlds, chained not to them but to your own hope that refuses to die. And yet, hope is not your enemy. Properly understood, it is the light of the self shining through the veil of projection. The mistake lies not in hoping, but in misplacing the object of hope. Instead of anchoring it to another's transformation, anchor it to your own. Instead of believing that their love will redeem you, believe that your own integration will heal you. In this way, a hope becomes not an addiction, but a compass, pointing you always toward the center of your being. It becomes the fuel for individuation, the sacred fire that propels you through despair into wholeness. When you begin this transmutation, you will notice subtle changes where once their absence felt like death, it will begin to feel like space. Where once their cruelty shattered you, it will begin to awaken defiance, the stirring of a power you forgot was yours. Dreams will come not of labyrinths, but of open roads, not of hollow statues, but of living trees. And in waking life, you will feel the quiet emergence of self-respect, the whisper of the self reminding you that you are not a beggar at the gates of another's affection, but the heir of your own kingdom. This is the true work of liberation, not to kill hope, but to free it from bondage, to recognize that what you craved from them was always your own birthright, to see that the love you long for in their eyes is the love your own soul waits to give you. When you finally turn inward, when you dare to confront the abandoned child and offer it the embrace you once begged from others, you will understand what it means to be whole. And in that moment, the narcissist will lose their power, not because they have changed, but because you no longer need them to complete your story. There comes a moment, often after the fever of obsession has burned itself to ash, when you glimpse the truth that has been hidden all along. You are not in love with a narcissist. You are in love with the possibility that they awaken in you, the possibility of being seen, of being chosen, of being loved without condition. It is this possibility that keeps you tethered, not the reality. For reality has shown you again and again their incapacity, their emptiness, their resistance to intimacy. Yet still you remain, because the archetype of hope does not belong to reason, it belongs to the very core of the psyche, where myth and longing intertwine. When you dream of them, you are not dreaming of their actual self, but of an inner figure who embodies redemption. Perhaps they appear as a luminous being, offering you a key, a door, a secret, or perhaps they vanish just as you reach them, leaving you breathless in pursuit. These dreams are not predictions of what will come. They are symbols of what you seek. And what you seek is not them, it is the forgotten self. The soul you abandoned in childhood, when love became conditional and presence became uncertain. The narcissist becomes the vessel for this projection, and you confuse the vessel with the treasure. But hope is a double-edged flame. It can guide you out of darkness, or it can burn you alive in its refusal to die. The addiction to hope is not unlike the myth of Tantalus, who stood in water yet could never drink. whose hunger was eternal, though fruit hung just beyond his reach. The narcissist is your tantalizing fruit, always close, never attainable, and your suffering comes not from thirst alone, but from the belief that if you endure long enough, the gods will relent. Yet the gods are silent, for the true lesson is not endurance, but awakening. To awaken is to see that the fruit is an illusion, that the water is a mirage, that the banquet you seek lies within you. I tell you this, the psyche does not bind you to another without reason. There is always a hidden purpose in the compulsions of the soul. You are drawn to the narcissist not to destroy yourself, but to be confronted with the shadow you have ignored. Their indifference awakens your buried rage. Their arrogance exposes your hidden wounds. Their coldness mirrors the places you have frozen within. They are the uninvited messenger, forcing you to reckon with what you would rather leave unseen. And though it feels like torment, it is in fact initiation. Without their presence, you might never have known how much of yourself still lay in chains. Yet, the path of liberation is not a single step, but a passage through fire. To break the addiction to hope, you must allow the old dream to burn. This is the mortification of the alchemists, the symbolic death of the illusion. You must watch as the image of them crumbles, as the pedestal collapses, as the fantasy dissolves into smoke. It is agonizing, for you are not losing them. You are losing the version of yourself who believed salvation would come from another's eyes. This self will cry out, will resist, will beg you to turn back. But if you endure, if you let the fire consume the false hope, what emerges from the ashes is a clearer vision of the self that needs no rescuer. There is an image that recurs often in the dreams of those breaking free, the image of a bird trapped in a cage that is already open. The dreamer pushes and scratches, desperate to escape, unaware that freedom has always been possible. The cage is not locked, the door is not sealed. The true prison is the belief that the door is closed. In this way, hope itself becomes the bars, because as long as you hope for them, as you believe, you must wait for release. But when you abandon that hope, when you see the cage for what it is, the sky opens and you realize you were free all along. Do not think this freedom is cold or loveless. On the contrary, it is warmer than any illusion could provide. For when you retrieve your projections, when you take back the anima or animus, you cast upon them, you discover within yourself the very qualities you sought. The love you begged for is the love you must now give to your own soul. The recognition you longed for is the recognition you must offer to the neglected parts of your being. This is the sacred inversion. What you wanted from them becomes the gift you must deliver to yourself. And in that giving, you become whole. Some will say this sounds lonely, that to love oneself is not the same as being loved by another. And yet, the paradox is that once you have reclaimed yourself, once you no longer chase illusions, you become capable of real relationship. No longer burdening another with the weight of your salvation, you can finally meet them as they are, not as the archetype you wish them to be. Only then does love become possible, two whole beings meeting in truth, not two wounded children clinging to the fantasy of completion. The narcissist can never offer this, for their own shadow still rules them, but you can, and by doing so, you step into the mystery of individuation, where love is no longer addiction but communion. The unconscious speaks in symbols, and one of its most powerful symbols is the phoenix. The phoenix does not merely survive the fire, it is reborn from it. So too must you pass through the flames of disappointment, betrayal, and grief, not to emerge empty, but to rise renewed. The addiction to hope must die, but in its death, hope itself is reborn, no longer chained to another, but anchored in the eternal promise of your own becoming. This is the hope that cannot be taken, for it is rooted not in the shifting sands of relationship, but in the bedrock of the self. Listen carefully. You are not addicted to the narcissist. You are addicted to the archetype of redemption they stir within you. You are addicted to the hope that one day someone outside you will heal what was broken inside. But the archetype does not lie. It merely misdirects. The Redeemer is real, but it is not them, it is you. And when you finally see this, when you accept the terrifying truth that you are the one you have been waiting for, the chains will fall, the labyrinth will dissolve, the mirror at its center will reveal not absence but presence, not emptiness but fullness, and you will understand that the hope that once enslaved you has become the very light of your liberation. The final revelation arrives not with thunder, but with silence, not with a dramatic gesture from the other, but with a subtle awakening within you, for the entire journey has never been about them. The narcissist was a mask, a trigger, a stage upon which your psyche performed its ancient drama. And the drama was not about their love, but about your own forgotten wholeness. The addiction to hope, which felt like a curse, was in truth a compass pointing you again and again toward the inner self. Even as you misunderstood its direction, what you called addiction was the psyche's desperate attempt to make you remember the betrayal you endured is not merely personal. It is archetypal, rooted in the collective myths of gods who abandon, lovers who deceive, and saviors who fail to arrive. You have carried within you the story of Persephone stolen into the underworld, of Psyche abandoned by Eros, of Christ crying out upon the cross, "Why have you forsaken me?" These myths are not relics, they are living currents, moving through your own blood, shaping your experiences. To love a narcissist is to step into one of these myths unawares, to play a role in a story older than history, and just as the heroes of myth are transformed by their trials, so too must you be. Dreams during this stage often reveal images of death and rebirth. A patient once told me of a dream where she lay in a coffin, her hands folded, while mourners passed by without seeing her. Just as despair overtook her, the lid of the coffin cracked open and light poured in. She awoke trembling, but also renewed, sensing that the dream had shown her the very process she was undergoing, the death of the false self, bound to hope, and the birth of the true self, capable of hope. Without chains, another dream revealed a vast desert where the dreamer collapsed from thirst, only to discover that water flowed up from within their own body, an endless spring. These are not fantasies but revelations of the psyche, showing the soul what the conscious mind cannot yet grasp, that everything sought outside lies hidden within. The shadow too must be embraced in this final act. For the narcissist not only awakens your longing, they awaken your rage, your jealousy, your despair. These feelings are not shameful. They are the parts of yourself you once exiled, now returned for integration. To reject them is to remain fragmented. To accept them is to become whole. The task is not to imitate the narcissist's cruelty, but to recognize that the fire you projected onto them belongs to you. Their power over you dissolves the moment you realize the fire is yours to wield. You are not powerless. You only believed you were. That belief was the real addiction, disguised as hope. Individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole, is never a path of comfort. It is a path of confrontation with illusions. The narcissist was both your torment and your mirror, forcing you to see the parts of yourself you would rather not face. Yet having faced them, you emerge no longer a seeker of crumbs, but a creator of abundance. You no longer kneel at the gates of another's indifference. You stand within the temple of your own being, radiant with a light no one can extinguish. There is a symbol I return to, often the mandala, in its circular symmetry. It reveals the truth of the self-wholeness, unity, balance. When you were trapped in the addiction to hope, your mandala was broken, a fragment chasing its missing piece in the outer world. But through the fire of suffering, the circle has been redrawn. The missing piece is not filled by another, but reclaimed from within. This is the true completion, not dependence, not illusion, but integration. The mandala of your being now shines with the fullness of who you are, no longer in search, but in realization. And so you will notice the shift where once the thought of them sent waves of longing, now it sends ripples of recognition. You see them for what they were, a teacher disguised as a tormentor, a mirror of your unclaimed soul. Where once you feared their absence, now you welcome it, for in their absence you hear the voice of the self more clearly. Where once you could not imagine life without the addiction, now you cannot imagine returning to chains. This is not arrogance, it is freedom. It is the freedom of the phoenix rising, of the mandala completed, of the self awakened. Remember, you were never addicted to them. You were addicted to the hope they embodied, the hope that someone outside could complete you. That hope was misplaced, but not false. It pointed to a truth hidden beneath illusion, that completion is possible, that wholeness awaits, but only within. To see this, to live this, is to walk the path of individuation. It is to step beyond the labyrinths of projection and into the vast open field of the self. So I tell you now, as if whispering into the depths of your unconscious, let the hope you carried be transfigured. Let it no longer bind you to another, but bind you to your own becoming. Let it ignite not the pursuit of their love, but the pursuit of your truth. For when you do, you will discover that the love you sought was never absent. It was only waiting, patient and eternal, at the center of your own soul. And in that discovery, you will no longer be an addict. You will be free.